Davante Adams telling Bleacher Report that he doesn't see Aaron Rodgers leaving Green Bay. Also says he's not planning on going anywhere himself, no matter what Rodgers decides to do. Adams heading into the final year of his deal, coming off a career year, arguably the best receiver in football. Arguably the best analyst at CBS Sports HQ. Brady Quinn joining us here. Brady, if Aaron Rodgers is gone, okay, that's a big caveat. If Rodgers is gone, do you see Davante Adams re-signing with the Packers?
Well, I think Davante Adams will most likely re-sign with the Packers before Aaron Rodgers makes his decision. I do think they'll get a deal done at some point in time before this season starts. Look, Davante Adams has 1 year left. They could use the franchise tag on him next year, but I think ultimately they'd like to get Davante Adams under a long-term deal in order to give him the chance to be with the next quarterback behind Aaron Rodgers, whether it's this year or in the years to come, and have a number one wide receiver. So they're going to get this deal done, and they're going to make Davante Adams happy. And he's not going to be a bad guy and not show up. He already proved he was going to show up to minicamp. He will show up to training camp because he knows how much money is potentially on the line. So bottom line is, he's right. He's not going anywhere. The reality, though, is Aaron Rodgers might not be his quarterback for much longer than this year, if at all this year.
Well, let's play Fact or Fiction on just that. Fact or Fiction, Brady. Aaron Rodgers will take the snap week 1 for the Packers as their starting quarterback.
Oh, this is a tough one to answer because, look, July 2nd's coming up. If you wanted to opt out and really save the team from having to charge potentially what he would be owed for a signing bonus, which is around $18.3 million, something in that ballpark, he could choose to opt out. However, it's irrevocable, meaning he can't decide to come back and play at any point in time in the season. So I don't know that date's ultimately significant, but it's something to keep an eye on moving forward. I personally think he loves football too much to not keep that option open. And I think his best option is going to be in Green Bay because there's no way the Packers are going to trade away the MVP from last season, a guy who I think gives them a legitimate shot at getting to a Super Bowl. So I'm going to say fact, although I could see him pulling a little Emmitt Smith, where maybe he misses a couple weeks.
Oh, okay.
Lets the Packers see what life is like without them, and then maybe comes back to be the hero. But could be a risky call because if you're a game or two away from getting that number 1 overall seed in the playoff picture, it really hurts you. Only one team gets a bye now.
Well, let's give you some odds on that because Sportsline has it at -250 that he will take the week 1 snap for the Green Bay Packers. When you know you have to lay that much, 250 to win 100, would you do that?
No, I think it tells you where, the odds makers are with all of this. And they've got as much insight as anyone else. But the reality is, I do think he'll be back for 1 more year. I don't think there's an outside chance that maybe, too, they restructure his contract along with Davante Adams. Try to make both those guys happy as a little bit of a peace offering, given everything that we've seen happen so far this offseason. So if I'm a betting man, yeah, I think he's the starter there week 1. How sure am I? Not very much, but there's not really much you can be assured for anymore these days. But that would be the safest bet, I think, of all the options.
Okay, continuing to play Fact or Fiction with Brady Quinn, and let's move on to the Chicago Bears in that same division. We're going to go to the Patriots first before we go to the Chicago Bears. Cam Newton will beat out Mac Jones for the starting quarterback job in New England.
That's a fact. The reality is this. Even though Mac Jones, I think, might have been the most mentally prepared quarterback coming into the draft, given what he was asked to do at Alabama, and knowing his background, having been around him too back when he was at high school, he's always had a high football IQ. The reality is this. Cam Newton's been in the system now for a year. And even though it wasn't a full year because of COVID and him signing late, he's still been in the system. He has chemistry and rapport with the guys he's throwing to. He will be the starting quarterback out of the gate. Now, based on how he performs, that will determine then when they want to go with a guy like Mac Jones. But my money's on Cam Newton being the guy, and I actually think he's going to have a much better year than maybe a lot of other people out there. I'm not so sure Mac Jones will see the field his rookie year. I've been with Josh McDaniels. I've been in that system. It requires a lot out of the quarterbacks, as far as what their responsibilities are before the play. So I think that plays to Cam Newton's advantage, not so much Mac Jones.
Interesting. Do you think Newton has the ability to lead this team into the AFC playoffs and become a contender again with all of everything else that they've added around him this season?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think when you look at the team as a whole, I mean, really their issue was, as much as it was offensively last year, too, the inability to throw the football, which they made some additions aspirations there. I think that'll help. A second year within the offense will help. The fact that they're trying to shore up some of that offensive line too will help. But also their defense. Their defense should be better with the amount of money that they poured into it. But now having two solid tight ends to throw to, you bring a big play wide receiver in a Nelson Aguilar to match with, I think, an even better rushing attack. This sets up to be, I think, a solid year and the chance at an outside chance of a wild card spot. I'm not so sure they'll compete with the Bills for the division, but I do think they could be potentially a wild card team.
So Brady's saying maybe Mac Jones doesn't see the field his rookie season. There are some rookie quarterbacks we know are going to see the field. Trevor Lawrence, for sure, #1 draft pick of Jacksonville. Let's set him aside and ask the question, fact or fiction, Justin Fields of the Bears will be the best rookie quarterback outside of Trevor Lawrence.
I'm going to say fact. And reason being is I think when you look at his overall skill set, one, he is a true dual threat quarterback. I still don't know that we ever saw his true capabilities at Ohio State as a runner. I think Matt Nagy at some point is going to be looking at Andy Dalton and him and saying, I've got Andy Dalton on a one-year deal. He's a veteran. I think he can do a good job, but this is my future. If I want to be the head coach here for the future, it's going to be Justin Fields. They need to get him in there sooner rather than later. His running ability will be an asset for this team and help improve that because that's struggled a little bit, but also the weapons that they have. And really his only competition is Zach Wilson with the New York Jets. Now they've revamped that offensive line. They've got more bodies to throw to. But I'm a bit higher, I think, on Justin Fields and what he can be this year if we're excluding Trevor Lawrence in this whole conversation.
And Trey Lance, you don't think he's going to see much of the field either?
I don't know. I don't think so. Again, another offense that requires a lot of the quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised, though, given how much the San Francisco 49ers gave up to get up to that #3 spot and take Trey Lance. But, again, the reality is they're going to be a run-the-football first team. I think if Jimmy Garoppolo gets the first crack at it, if he stays healthy, he'll play well enough where I don't think Trey Lance will see the field until, at best, midpoint or later on this season.
Okay, so fact, Justin Fields is going to be the best rookie quarterback outside of Trevor Lawrence. Moving on and talking veterans here. The Dolphins cornerback, Xavien Howard, 4 years left on his deal. And when he got paid in 2019, it was a record-breaking deal, but he wants to get even more money because he's seen how things have shifted around. He's not even the highest paid cornerback on his team. So fact or fiction, true or false, either way you want to go here. Xavien Howard will have a deal reworked by the Dolphins before the season begins.
I'm going to say fiction on this one. Let's not forget, okay, the salary cap did jump down, right? It was reduced from what it was close to $200 million now, about $184 million. So a significant drop that's going to hurt his ability to be able to restructure this, right? Because you need to have all that signing bonus money and spread it out over the future years. They've already got him included in their cap planning for the future because he's still got 4 years left. So because of that, it makes it a little bit more difficult to restructure. If they're thinking about signing anyone or restructuring anyone, it's going to be some of the other players that they've got on their current roster that they're looking at down the road in a year or two. It's not Xavien Howard, I can promise you that. So I think this is fiction. There's a better chance that he'll end up playing this year or they end up moving on from him altogether and deciding to go a different route where maybe another team can satisfy what he wants under, as far as his contract for an average annual salary. He's already getting paid a boatload right now. It's just not quite as much as he thinks he deserves. And, Brian Flores might say, I'm good with that. Go somewhere else then. We're happy to work with the guys we've got.
What do you think they could get in return for him if they do end up unloading him?
I mean, that's the hard thing to get an idea of. I mean, he's a top-flight cornerback. It's obviously a premium position at this point, and you've got him under a contract. So usually you'd be saying, okay, with that many years left on his deal, I might be willing to give up what I feel like is a first-round pick because I know I've got a legitimate Pro Bowl caliber player coming in who can start right away. The problem is he's got demands for a new contract. And so because of that, it comes with some baggage. That might knock this thing down to a second-round pick or a lesser amount because all teams know that he's unhappy right now with his current contract situation, and maybe he's willing to take a hit or hold out and not show up to training camp or this season if he doesn't get a new deal.
All right, we had a retirement of sorts, I guess, this week in the NFL. You might have said, what? Demaryius Thomas? I thought he was already retired. No, he made it official earlier on this week. Hasn't played since the 2019 season. Fact or fiction, Thomas is going to get into the Broncos Ring of Fame. They haven't had a player inducted into that Ring of Fame in 5 years.
They will have with this one. I mean, look, he's second leading receiver in regards to yards. During my time there with him, he was an absolute joy to be around. He really came in with the right demeanor, the work ethic, the attitude, everything that you're kind of looking for from a wide receiver, and so much natural ability. But I think when you look at his body of work and his track record, he might be one of the more underrated wide receivers as far as just his overall ability with his catch and run football and as far as what he's able to do with the ball in his hands. You see the big touchdown there for the wild card win that got us into the next round of the playoffs. But the most damage he ever done wasn't there with Tim Tebow, it was with Peyton Manning. But again, those are the years that I think really brought his career to an entirely different level and one that does deserve to be in the Ring of Fame.
All right, let's move on then. One more for you, and it's time to tell the truth because Tom Brady isn't. He said last week that when he goes up and he's at a press conference, he's being asked questions by the media that he doesn't often tell the truth. He said, what I say versus what I think are two totally different things. I would say 90% of what I say is probably not what I'm thinking, which is challenging. He goes on to say, I really admire people that actually can do that and say what they think because they invite a lot of other things into their life. So, fact or fiction, Brady Quinn was completely honest during all of his press conferences.
The funny thing is I'm looking on my rundown notes here and they've already got fiction. So someone already answered this for me. No, you cannot always be truthful and forthcoming.
Nobody can, right? I mean,
no, because you don't want to create a distraction. And that's what, everyone asks you, especially as the quarterback, as a leader, and who is going to make headlines if you say something or if you step outside of the company line. You're going to create headlines, and that's the last thing you want to do. So, of course, you can't be, forthcoming with what you really want to say, but you'd like to try to be truthful as much as you can. So, again, it sounds like a lot of times coaches talk. Other times this was probably, one of the instances where I might have been more truthful. But the reality is, when you're talking about your opponent, when you're talking about your game plan and your preparation, other things going on, you don't want to give your opponent an edge. So you're very seldom time really talking about the actual truth of what's going on.
What percentage of the truth did you speak? Brady said it's about 10% of the time he's telling.
No, I would say it's probably more 20, 30%. It depends on the individual. It depends on the questions you're being asked. One of the easiest things that is to be truthful about is when you talk about yourself. When you talk about your play, your preparation, things that are personal to you, it's easy to be truthful about that. And that's what teams will always tell you. You don't speak for someone else. Don't speak for the rest of the team, because then you put other players in a bad position. So hopefully most players are pretty truthful about it. But when you start asking questions about the other team's personnel, other players, different things that are going on with the scheme, typically you have to then be a little bit more wary of what you're going to say, and you got to kind of tiptoe around the truth a little bit.
How do you feel about the way Jack Capitorto produces the show?
Well, the weird thing is he's a Tampa Bay Bucs fan. So the fact that he didn't want us to talk about a Tampa Bay Bucs player, especially one, the GOAT, and Tom Brady, it's not surprising. It's not surprising to me.
I think that's the truth.
Yeah.
Brady Quinn
He's trying to
speaking
protect
with us on CBS Sports HQ. Thank you so much, Brady. Pick Six Podcast is where it's at. Your daily NFL picks with Will Brinson, who will never be over what happened to NC State at the College World Series. I'm sure he's still tweeting about it. A dream ripped away from Will as a fan of a college baseball team.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.